At the previous lesson, I explained dice roll example till the end, as much as I wanted to talk about it. We started this example in the previous week. In the previous week, I explained business logic of it, how was random numbers how it generated random numbers, but I didn't explain how GUI was working, how model view controller worked. Video 2, it was first half of this previous lesson. I explained how model view controller of this example works, how templates are used together with the data provided by business logic to generate HTML pages. And that was video 2. In video 3, I discussed dependency injection at larger scale, as we did before for SpringBoot. And this was for short discussion, about 15 minutes, for dependency injection. After this, I discussed PaperRockScissors example because it is so close to your assignment. Assignment 1 is posted, and please, when you do it, just refer to this example, PaperRockScissors, and also hello user, that kind of similar to both of them. In dice roller, not so far. In dice roller, you use loop to print stuff, and in PaperRockScissors, there's no loop, so you can couple logic here. When we discussed assignment 1, I pointed out that in order to make it simpler, please make decision about content of the boxes after you received user input. No, of course, not based on user input, random choice. Why it is so much easier? It is so much easier because if you decide what is in each box, before asking user, you have to store it before asking user, right? In this way, you have to preserve data between two pages, between showing first page and showing second page. If you have to do it, it has to be preserved per browser. Because this data is updated according to interaction between different users from web. So it is not immediately obvious up to today how to do it because we didn't discuss. So again, in your assignment, I asked you, please make decision about content of the boxes when you already received user input. Which box is chosen? But of course, not based on user input, otherwise it would be cheating, but from the point of view of the program, based on random choice. This way, you don't have to store data between two pages. Because storing data is a separate issue, it has to be done per browser. Right? Because users interact with this program independently, so it has to be per browser. The same approach is used in PaperRockScissors. It is asking user what is the choice, and after this, it is making random choice, not based on the user choice. And the issue of storing data between generating two pages is avoided because it is generating own random choice just when second page is generated, not when the first page is generated. So I was avoiding issue of storing data. Okay. But, and I said that we can store if you want to. We just didn't learn it so far. And today we will learn how to do it. All right? So I use the same example to show how to store data between generation of two pages. Okay. We will use session to store this data. There are variants of different ways how to store it. Databases, right? Whatever, right? But if you use databases, somehow you need to match this data to browser anyway. So it has to be matched to browser. Okay, so let's or to user with login and password. So let's go to example PaperRockScissors. It was explained before, but just I want to show the part that is storing data now. So if you clone it, you can use the same code. I didn't change it between these lessons. If you didn't clone it, please clone it. You probably already know how to clone, so don't need to re-explain. So again, it is the same code as the previous lesson, but different branch of the code. So please clone it if you didn't clone it, or just open it from hard drive. This is what I will do. I will just open from hard drive. PaperRockScissors. Here it is. So there is a branch, call it main, and this branch was explained as the previous lesson, so it is here. There are two additional branches, call it using session and using input form. I will talk about using input form at the following lesson, not this lesson. It is separate concept, and it is already familiar to you from other examples. But today I want to devote this lesson to just sessions. So, but now it is open as in the previous lesson. So, for quick refreshing, what happened? Let's run this program and see general behavior. When browser sends request to default address, this one, it just shows the input page. No data generated. It is just input form, right? And just because it is plain input form, this is fixed. If I want to make default choice random, I would have to generate some randomization and add it to the form, right? So radio button would be selected by random choice. The easiest way is to do it differently, is to generate form and bind it to input form. And this is about other solutions that I will describe at the next lesson. But for now, it is just just fixed piece without any generated data. Right. Except this date. Where date is coming from? A date is coming from this method. I mark it as this model attribute local date, and methods that are marked with model attribute are called each time when we generate page, and this is added to the model. So it does have some dynamic content, but nothing related to business logic. It is just current date at the bottom of the page. Right? So what happens next? This form, view page source, is sending data to with my form. So here it is. Form, input, submit, play. It's a label on the button, but where this form is starting? Here it is. This is where the form is starting. Action, it's always address where data goes. So it is, when I click play button, it sends request to address play. Okay. What does it submit? It submits input radio, this value from this input, user choice. Okay. Whatever is selected will be submitted, either paper in capital, rock in capital, scissors in capital. To address play, right? So when I click scissors, play. You see, to address play, it sends user choice scissors. Okay. So it was sent as request parameter, as any input is sent as request parameter. So I receive it here. At address play, I have another method. And I receive a choice as request parameter. It was sent a string, but I receive it as enumeration type. If it is matching strings that I receive it up to case it is case sensitive. It will pick enumeration type correctly. So I send scissors in capital, so it will be choice scissors. Okay. And now, just because I avoided storing this, I'm printing user choice, just because I avoided storing data between generation of 2 pages, to make it simple, I make random choice for the computer after receiving user choice. So the same, in your assignment, please do this way, it will be simpler. Decide content, what was in the boxes, after you already received user choice, but of course not based on the user choice. Okay? Random choice. Okay? Random decision. So this is computer choice I'm printing, and after this I figure out what is result of it. I submit user choice, computer choice, and got game data. What is game data? Game data is an object that stores player 1 choice, player 2 choice, and game result. Player 1 is a user, player 2 is computer in this sense, and game result. I didn't discuss this is just getters. I didn't discuss this part before. And this may look a little interesting because if you took Android course, you saw something similar. In Kotlin, this kind of switch is called when, right? When. In Java, this switch is called switch. Okay. In Java, current Java, starting Java 11, we have 2 kinds of switches. A regular switch, like historic switch, that you saw in C#, in other languages, right? Like historic. And switch that returns value. Similar to Kotlin switch, but it has less features. You see, I have return in switch because this switch is returning value. Which one last evaluated? How it works? If player choice is rock, right? I have another switch. If player 2 choice, for example, is scissors, result of this switch is player 1 wins. Okay? Because this switch will return player 1 wins, and this will return player 1 wins, so return will be player 1 wins. Because this switch is returning value. Unlike Kotlin, if does not return value. Java, if does not return value. Kotlin, if does return value. You can assign if to variable. Not in Java, and not in C#. In Java, you can use switch with arrows to assign it to variable or use it as a return. And you can use that regular switch that you cannot assign. That is for compatibility. All right, questions? So that wasn't explained in the previous lesson, and I realized that maybe you're not familiar with this one because it's new language, and I didn't cover it before, so it's a new topic, kind of. Okay. So let's continue. And this is how system decides who is the winner. I don't want to go from one line to another line, it is too much. I believe the rest is explained. Yeah, at the previous lesson, it's video recorded. So let's switch to branch code using session. Check out. Let's go to game controller and see current logic. Okay. Now, when it shows input page, it is asking for parameter HTTP session. HTTP session is an object. How it works? Session object is an object per browser. It's allocated in memory per browser. How does it maintain a match between browser and piece in memory, storing this location in memory, storing this object? It is done by default using session ID cookie. How session ID cookie works? When I ask for HTTP session object, it will check if there is a cookie in the request, session ID cookie. If there is a session ID cookie, it will try to find existing session ID, a session object by the given ID. If such cookie does not exist in request, it will create new object and will create cookie for created session and add it to response. So once a page is sent back to the browser, it will be received with session ID cookie. Next time when request comes from the browser, it will come with session ID cookie, so it can pick session object based on ID. All right? So we will do demo. Okay? So let's currently it is running localhost, but it is previous version. It's not current because I switched it. I switched code, but I didn't restart server. So let's stop it. But before I run it, I go to browser Control-Shift-I, stand for inspection. And I want to check if I have session ID cookie. No, I don't. Cool. Okay. So, how it works? So let's watch it. I run. So what happens now? Nothing, because we didn't send request yet. So going to localhost 8080. What do I see? Session ID cookie. So what happened? Let's see. I'm here. So it says input is called. So I'm here. Computer choice paper. So it got random choice, computer choice, printed computer choice paper. Correct? And it added this to session. This session was brand new, so when it was generated, system added, so SpringBoot added this to response object. A response object together with HTML included in response object was received by was received by servlet container. Servlet container unpacked this and send this information through network. Page inside of the response and cookie inside of response header. So this cookie was received by the browser in the response header, and now browser is storing the cookie. Okay. So we can try to trace this stuff. Click on network, and then scroll up to localhost, click on response, no, in headers, In headers, scroll it, set cookie, session ID. You see it? So in the response object, header was instruction to the browser set cookie session ID. And this is how I got cookie in the browser. Okay? In which cookie? This one. See, set cookie session ID. Path, it is scope of the cookie. It is global to this. Slash means everything in the root folder and other subfolders, so it becomes global. You can limit scope of the cookie by path. By default, it is global per website. In this case, per this website. Localhost 80, the localhost. So, this is how cookie is received. So next, I select something, like whatever, paper, okay, and I click play. So what happens? Click play. I'm here. Browser sends response to address play, so I'm here. I received user choice. So you see, play is called. Play is called. I received user choice paper. Computer choice was also paper. It is the same one. Where it received, where it was retrieved. You see, I asked for session. Just because cookie came back in request, system is able to find session object based on cookie ID. So let's see. Now go to network, check headers, network, click on top, check headers, and browse for request. Okay, browser sent request to the server and request header. So this is header of request header. Scroll, you see request headers. Cookie, session ID. A request from the browser came back with the cookie previously sent to the browser, containing the same ID. This is how a server could pick the session object associated with session ID cookie. So it started with sending cookie, session ID cookie from the server in the browser, and now browser will send session ID cookie in every request, so server will be able to pick session object based on the ID. So when I ask for session, and when there is a session ID cookie in the request, it will be able to, it will try to find session object based on the ID in the cookie. But it's not necessary to find it. Why? Because many things can happen. Session may expire, right? If session expires, yeah, you done, right? If session expires, you don't have it. So why do session expire? Session is some object allocated in memory. It can be stored on hard drive, is another choice, or in a database, another choice, but by default it's in memory. We will talk about this more. But a server doesn't have infinite memory, so it cannot keep it forever. So for this reason, at some point server will decide when to dump it. Okay? You can provide information when you want to, say, get rid of it. No, it's not here. I didn't say it here. So for this program, now it's default. In another program, I have settings. In this, it is default. You can override it in application properties. Expiration time for session. Right? So when a request comes and it contains the ID, session ID cookie. It will try to find session object, and if it doesn't find it, it will create new one silently. And if it creates new one, after you try to get your computer choice, this will be null because it's not stored there. This is how you know if it is expired. If it expires, it will give you new session object. It will not crash, it will not warn you. It will be just new empty object. And new empty object will not have this piece. So I'm showing session expired. All right? Otherwise, I'm asking for what is gain data and displaying data. So let's imitate its session expired, just for fun, okay? Now, I play again. Now, what happens? I have session ID cookie already, right? And that session ID cookie was created when server generated first session for the browser. This session ID cookie lives here in application cookie here, right? So when I send play, I send request to the server with clicking play button, and this session ID cookie will go back. Server will find session object based on ID and decide and pick computer choice from this object, right? Because now computer is making choice before asking user for the choice. Okay. What would happen if I delete it before sending my question, my reply? Just because cookie is not there, I deleted it. It will not travel in the request. So my program will treat it as, yeah, there is no ID, so it's new request, right? Totally new browser, or browser with expired session. There is no ID in it. And when it will receive it, it will not be able to find session because there is no ID, session ID cookie. I deleted this. So I will be here. I ask for session. There is no session ID cookie. It will create new one. Just because it's a new one, this will return null because session is key value storage. You can put as many objects as you like, it's key value. But if you use key but no value, it returns null. So this will be null. And since it's a null, I'm returning model and view session expired template. So this is how I see session expired template. Right? Questions? But this is not the end of the story. By the way, when this was sent, it was new session created, right? And a response containing session ID cookie, and I got session ID cookie back. Right? And now let's imitate situation differently. To see something which was there, but I didn't emphasize it to make it look simpler. Okay? Next, let's go to front page. And I delete this piece. So it's like a new one. Okay. I didn't click submit here. I didn't click enter. I just clean it up. Okay. Next, I will clean this up. So it's like a fresh. And this has something to do with IntelliJ, but it's not essential. Okay. So, fresh start. Right? Next, I go to localhost 8080 by clicking this link or just refreshing the page. So what is the situation? Browser sends a request to localhost 8080 default address. But this request will not contain session ID cookie. So for the server, it's new thing, right? It's totally some browser on web sending request first time to the default address. Do you see what I'm trying to imitate? I want to send a request to this address first time. So I clean it cookie, and I'm sending to default address by pressing enter after localhost 88. Okay? So what happens? It created session ID cookie. So far the same, correct? But it's not. First page is different. First page is different because it is the first page sent to this browser first time. If you look up view page source, you will see something interesting. A view page source, where is that? View page source. You will see session IDs in every link. Session ID, even to image links. But what is important, it is inside of play. Okay. Besides sending session ID cookie, our server trying to insert session ID in every possible link. So if I click on this link, address will be sent in the request, right? So session ID will not be lost, even if cookie is not coming back. But it happens only once, first time. When cookie is received, it will know that browser allows cookie, so it will stop doing it. Okay? It does it only first time because it doesn't. Framework doesn't know if browser accepts cookies or doesn't. Because there is no way to know. There is no API for it. Okay. So, session ID cookie is received. And now I have session ID in every link because this browser is fresh. It wasn't known to the server before. Okay? I deleted cookie. Next. When I click play, since this address now contains session ID, address in play, session ID is sent as a part of the request. Okay? But what else is sent is session ID cookie. So now server received session ID cookie and this. So even if session ID cookie is not received, it will keep doing this thing, inserting session ID in every piece. But since it received session ID cookie, it will stop doing it. So if you repeat it again, it will not be happening again. You see, there is no session ID here. Why? Because server received session ID cookie, it made decision that browser accepts session ID cookies and it will be always back. There is no need to insert ID in every link. Okay. So if now you click view page source on any page, or this or that, view page source, you will not see that IDs. See, it's clean. So, if browser, for this particular program, if browser does not access cookie, it will maintain automatically session ID in every link. So when you click on any link or submit button, session ID is submitted with the request as a part of the address. Who is doing it? SpringBoot is doing this by default. Okay. So this program will work even without session ID cookie, maintaining session. If session ID cookie is not returning back, it will keep maintaining IDs in every link. And this behavior is turned off by default. This behavior is turned off for most web programs because it's considered less safe than session ID cookie. Inserting session ID in every link. So most web programs don't have it, but it's not a bug, it's a feature because it's less safe. Okay. So most sessions are maintained by session ID cookie. And if a session ID cookie doesn't come, oops, it will say you have to turn on cookies, otherwise you cannot do anything. Most websites tell it to you, right? You cannot go to Facebook with turn it off cookies because it will not let you to do that. You will get message that your cookies are not working, so you have to turn them on. Okay. Because maintaining IDs through links are less safe, so this feature is turned off for good reason. In this example, it's not turned off to show this piece of web. Okay. Plus, turning this off is extra work, so I didn't do it. All right, so this is about session ID and session ID cookie, how session object on the server side is matched by cookie. So when a session object is created on the server side, at the same time, server creates session ID cookie and send it in response. Response will be received together with the page. Response will be received in a browser, session ID cookie is stored, and it will be attached to every request going back. So server will be able to match session object, or per browser storage, it is session object, with the ID inside of session ID cookie. So this is how session works. This is automatic, you just need to ask for session and use it. But this object will be per browser. Questions? No? So in this particular example, session is extra complexity and it's not really necessary because, you know, in the previous version of this program, it was, I slightly rearranged this logic and it didn't need to use session at all. But when logic is more complicated, like you have many pages, you know, session is simpler to do. Okay, so let's talk about what is stored in this session. In this case, I stored just one variable referring to choice, and choice is enumeration. Enumeration type is serializable by default. So what did we learn so far? Session is an object allocated per browser when you ask for it. And it is matched by session ID cookie by default. And there is another option, if session ID is not available, there is a feature. In this case, it is turn it on. In most cases, turn it off. To insert IDs inside of every link automatically, so when user clicks on ID, on link, on the submit button, session ID will travel inside of request through address. This is what we learned. Allocation per browser, it takes memory, right? Because many websites are busy, lots of users. One way to deal with it is to create short expiration date, right? Yeah, short expiration for the session. But it's also inconvenience because users may just come back in 15 minutes later and it's expired, right? So how servers deal with it? If memory kind of becomes, say, hard to get, right? It is running out of memory, it will start saving these session objects to hard drive. So server will not crash, it will start saving this session object to hard drive. And find them by ID, whatever, from hard drive. So those objects inside that you put into session should be savable to files in default Java format. So For this reason, a data that you store in session should be serializable. What's for in Java serializable? What does it mean serializable? Can be automatically converted into bytecode. This means serializable. If you use default Java types, like strings, integer, double, whatever, lists, everything that comes as default Java type is serializable. But you need to tell explicitly this object is serializable. I think implement serializable. In this case, this doesn't do it. It's not really necessary here, because enum is already serializable. It's kind of overdone. But if you declare your own type, which is more complicated than just 3 numbers, you have to write in implements serializable. This is a label that tells the system that, yeah, this object can be converted into bytecode by default. If your object cannot be converted into bytecode by default because you use some data structures written in another language, this is a separate issue. Okay, deal with it. Okay, I'm not covering it. So, in the most simplest scenario, if you use just Java objects, any Java type is serializable. Unless you import some type from another library that is not written in Java. Okay? So, next example stores more complicated objects, not just enum, which is essentially constant, right? Enum is constant. And it has additional things to discuss. Right? So let's finish discussion of this example, unless you have questions. Questions? No? So I end this discussion of PaperRockScissors branch code using session.